Kevin Stefanski has been named the new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, becoming the second head coach hired in this cycle. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Browns are moving into the second round of interviews for their vacant head coaching position. Will they turn to a young offensive mind, or could the answer already be in Berea? Let's break it all down right here on the Daily Dawgs. Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Dawgs here on the Big Play Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. I'm Ryan Tyler, joined by Nick Padone, Browns on SI Insider, as well as host of the Big Play Cleveland show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Nick, good morning. Wild weekend NFL divisional round games. They are complete. 2 overtime thrillers. A interesting game, to say the least, between the Patriots and the Texans, full of turnovers, and then an absolute throttling there in Seattle as the Seahawks beat the 49ers. Nick, this is the league that never sleeps. Even the teams that are on sabbatical right now, they have plenty to do as they search for their next head coaches. We know 9 openings. Now it's just 7 as Kevin Stefanski is the head coach in Atlanta. Before we dive into anything, good morning.
Yeah, great morning. Great to be here with you. Obviously, we're super pumped to launch this new show, the Daily Dawgs, here on the Big Play Sports Network. We're going to be joined throughout the week by Cleveland legends Josh Cribbs, Hanford Dixon, Phil Taylor. We're going to do this show every single day, give you guys the latest rundown on what's going on in the Cleveland Browns universe, pair it up with some of our Browns on SI headlines. So really excited to kick this off. Daily Browns coverage on the Big Play Sports Network is here, and there is no better time to do it as we are in the midst of a crazy NFL playoffs, and the Browns are in the midst of trying to get back to the playoffs, and that all starts with finding this next head coach.
Nick, I am so excited when I saw this news, Kevin Stefanski going to Atlanta. Like, you knew the narrative going into next season is going to be shifted one way or the other. Like, I think there could probably be a middle ground when it comes to Kevin Stefanski. We're obviously all going to be watching closely here in Cleveland, at least for the first year or so. It's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be Kevin Stefanski heads to Atlanta with good offensive pieces around him in a winnable division right away. Let's say he makes the playoffs. The Browns are going to look bad. It's just what it is. Or it's going to shift. He fails in Atlanta in the first year. Things don't go well. The offense is kind of dull. And then we're going to be sitting here in Cleveland. Well, maybe the Browns did make the right decision. I love the landing spot for Kevin. We talked about it was kind of an easy pairing for Harbaugh to go to the Giants. I thought this was probably the second easiest.
Yeah.
To at least predict Kevin Stefanski going to Atlanta.
Great run game. They've got a couple of pieces offensively. And look, if this pans out and Stefanski's a good fit for the Falcons, good for him. The fact of the matter is you don't survive in the National Football League when you win just 8 games over your last 2 seasons, especially when we hear some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry were not on the same page anymore. It was time for a change. So I wish Kevin Stefanski all the best. I've seen a lot of the sentiments that were shared out over the weekend that Kevin Stefanski was a great guy. He really was, and he was a great coach. And if this feels a little bit weird for you as a Browns fan, and a little bit unfamiliar, you're allowed to, because this is the first time in a very long time where you fire a coach and he immediately gets scooped up and hired somewhere else as a head coach. So you're allowed to feel a bit weird if you're a Browns fan about this, but the fact of the matter was we knew we couldn't run it back. Like, what were they going to do? Run it back with Kevin Stefanski next year and try to pretend like the last 2 seasons didn't happen? They were certainly on a different page, the coaching staff and the front office. So hopefully Kevin Stefanski, can actually land on his feet. He technically landed on his feet because he got a nice little pay raise. I don't know if you saw that in his 5-year contract out there in Atlanta, but hopefully a little bit of success follows, and it'll be fun to watch him play Baker Mayfield twice a year down there too.
I'm excited, Nick. Like I said, I wish the best for Kevin Stefanski. I'm not one of those people that want to see him fail because he leaves Cleveland. Like, I appreciate what he did. I tweeted out like the day that he got fired. When Schefter put that out, I said, Kevin Stefanski, only Browns coach in my lifetime, 24 years on this planet. I thought he's the only Browns head coach that's kind of left it better than he found it. And people were on my case about, well, he inherited a 6-win team and he left when it wins 5 wins. Okay, if we're being that specific, sure, I understand the sentiment. But 2 11-win seasons, a couple trips to the playoffs. Yes, not much playoff success, but remember, we're building from the basement here in Cleveland. Like, the standard's a standard in Pittsburgh. We got a different standard here in Cleveland, and I appreciate everything he did, and I'm excited because, again, he can go to Atlanta, a very winnable division, and he can succeed. And, Nick, how poetic is it here that next season Cleveland Browns host Kevin Stefanski and the Atlanta Falcons here at Huntington Bank Stadium?
And that'll be a fascinating scene because, honestly, for as much as everybody wants to bellyache this and, the Browns look bad, like, you fire this guy and he's the most in-demand coach and gets hired right after Harbaugh, like, Go check out what Falcons fans are saying about this hire. They're not exactly thrilled because they understand Kevin Stefanski's walking into an environment. Michael Penix Jr. is headed into year 3. That's where Kevin Stefanski walked into Cleveland. Baker Mayfield headed into year 3. You got some serious questions about if he's the quarterback of the future. You've got some premium young talent, but you want to win with them now. You don't really want to, let those guys get too much older, and then you got to make those difficult decisions on them. So even though, this is like a quote-unquote attractive fit for Kevin Stefanski, they've got some real things to sort through as well. They don't have a first-round draft pick this year. They've only got 4 or 5 draft picks. 4 draft picks in total this year. So this isn't like some dream fit. And by the way, go check out what Falcons fans are saying about this. Go check out the Atlanta Falcons subreddit. Go check out Falcons Twitter. People aren't in love with this, especially because of how the Baker Mayfield situation was handled here in Cleveland and because of how the Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel thing was handled this year. A lot of people are gun shy about Kevin Stefanski and this fit. But to your point about him leaving it in a better situation than what it was, I would like to hope that whoever is the next coach could kind of take the baton and move off of what Kevin built, because you won your last 2 games of the season here. This isn't a dead organization. This isn't 1-31. It's not as bad as it once was. It's bad. Don't get me wrong. We're not sitting here singing the Cleveland Browns praises on a Monday, but I'd like to think that you could try to win maybe 6 games next year, maybe 7, maybe 8. Let's get crazy and build off this really good defense, have another good draft, and you could be one of these worst to first stories.
Nick, I was kind of thinking too, how quickly he was hired say about the Browns and Kevin Stefanski in general, because I think we both agreed there's a fringe of the fan base, and a lot of it is new people coming in with Shedeur that don't like Kevin Stefanski. Say it how it is. They just don't like Kevin Stefanski. The fact he was hired this quickly, the fact of he's going to I think, ready-to-win now roster. We talked about John Harbaugh being that super top candidate. Well, Kevin Stefanski was clearly the second. They didn't even let him get in that second interview with the Titans. What does it say about how they felt the Browns were managed? Because they kind of, to me, it signals, they thought Kevin got a raw end of the deal. You go back to remember when they traded Flacco, Mike Tomlin, whether you thought it was a shot, it was defending a shot at Andrew Berry defending Kevin Stefanski. It does feel like the sentiment around the league and all you hear from these insiders is Kevin Stefanski had a raw hand. He had an offense that many coaches probably wouldn't have been able to work with, a quarterback carousel that no coach could have worked with.
I think it's the same reason why Todd Bowles got hired right away, despite what happened with the New York Jets. Is everybody was he failed, but it was the Jets, and that's Woody Johnson. And I think that's kind of what we have here, fair or not, because to Jimmy Haslam's credit, which I don't do much of, he gave this thing a 6-year leash and a 6-year runway, and he saw through the project of Baker Mayfield to its completion and the project of Deshaun Watson pretty much almost all the way into its completion. You just know that hadn't worked to date. So, I understand why they had to make a change, but I think it does say a lot about the overall environment that Kevin Stefanski was coaching in, and I think you see that, look at the staff that he's putting together. And Bill Callahan wasn't willing to boomerang his way back to the Cleveland Browns, but he's got no issue jumping on board with the Atlanta Falcons. Maybe it's not a Stefanski issue, but maybe it's not a Barry issue. Maybe it's the people that sit in those fancy glass offices above everybody else. That certainly seems to be the sentiment around the National Football League. And until the Browns find consistent winning, until the Browns finally shake that label of having an ownership group that meddles too much, this is always going to be something that circles them and follows them, regardless of how long this next head coach is employed by the team.
And Nick, when I said the thing about Kevin Stefanski leaving it better than he found it, I also ended that with saying I thought it was the right move still, as you said. Both truths can be present at the same time. The fact that I think Kevin Stefanski did have a raw end of the deal with how bad the offense was, but I think it was right still to make a change. All right, let's transition, Nick. Cleveland Browns could hire head coach sooner than later. We now know second interviews with Jim Schwartz, Todd Monken, Grant Udinski, Nate Scheelhaus, Mike McDaniel, and Jesse Minter. So it kind of seems like I'm reading it like this, Nick. Aiden Durd, not a final candidate. Tommy Rees, Dan Pitcher as well, not final candidates, correct?
I mean, at this point, right, that's all the information that we have to roll with. Only in Cleveland, by the way, do you bring back over 50% of the guys that you interviewed for a second interview, and you're not going to be able to fulfill the Rooney Rule on this entire thing until the Rams wrap this up, because we're waiting on Nathan Shieldhouse now. So I thought when Kevin Stefanski was hired in Atlanta that the Browns would want to work a little bit quicker than some might have expected, just because you don't want Stefanski to bludgeon this staff even further. Like, he's going to take Tommy Reese, it sounds like, to Atlanta. He's going to reunite with Bill Callahan down there in Atlanta. You look at the defensive side of the football, I believe the safeties coach is getting a defensive coordinator look. You don't want some of those defensive position coaches to follow Stefanski down there to Atlanta if Ulbrich wants to make any changes on the defensive side of the football down there. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because even if they wanted to hire a coach this week, they're obviously going to interview Jim Schwartz for the second time today. Todd Monken is going to be Tuesday, Mike McDaniel Wednesday, Udinski and Shieldhouse are kind of TBD, not announced yet. Same with Jesse Minter. So, like, you actually can't really hire anybody, though, until you get that second interview. So I thought that they were going to move a little bit quicker, because that's what conventional wisdom would have told you to do. But it certainly feels like maybe now the Browns could be cool with slow playing this. I'm not sure.
Are we taking, like, for instance, Todd Monken second interview as a head coach candidate seriously? Are we taking Nate Shieldhouse second interview as a head coach candidate seriously? Nate Shieldhouse probably seems more of bring him in potentially as the OC, correct? At least that's how I'm reading it. I don't really understand the Todd Monken rather than you continue to just build this information gathering process. To me at this moment, doesn't it almost seem like it's either Schwartz or Udinski, maybe Mike McDaniel, but then again, if he doesn't get the head coach job, he's certainly not going to come here to take an OC role, right?
Yeah, because and he even said that he would pass on a quote-unquote bad head coach opening for an OC opening, and you look at who he's interviewing with, like Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's a pretty good OC opening, I'd say. The Detroit Lions, I'd say that's a pretty attractive one as well. I've even seen some smoke, and I don't think any of it's true, Mike McDaniel to Ohio State as their offensive coordinator, which would just be crazy. Yeah, dude, like, I think Schwartz is real. I think Udinski is real. I think they're intrigued by Shieldhouse. The Monken one is weird, just because, like, he's never been a head coach anywhere except, like, a smaller college football program. I can't even remember what school it was. He's a lifelong OC. I wonder if they're trying to finagle where, like, if they go with one of these young guys, like, say they go with Udinski, say they go with Shieldhouse, I think they want, like, a proven coordinator on either side of the football, because maybe Jim Schwartz just walks away. Like, if they go with Udinski, maybe he's like, hey, I'm 59 years old. I'm going to be 60 next year. I'm not going to work for some 30-year-old kid while you guys try to figure out whatever you're trying to figure out. I'm going to go be a defensive coordinator somewhere else. That's well within his right to do so. And if he does, then maybe they could lean, okay, well, at least we'll have NFL experience if we hire Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator with Udinski, who's never called plays before, by the way. So you at least then you'd have a seasoned play caller, and then you throw that associate head coach label that Bubba Ventrone currently has on either of Todd Monken or Jim Schwartz. I don't think this is a bad thing that they're talking to all of these guys, because, again, it's information gathering. And by the way, we've got a little bit of breaking news on our first ever recorded version here of the Daily Dogs. The Buffalo Bills have fired head coach Sean McDermott. So maybe another one into the mix. I'm not sure if the Browns would want, an immediate retread. If even McDermott would want an immediate retread, but I got to imagine the Bills are going to be one of the premier jobs that are open right now, because who wouldn't want to go coach Josh Allen?
Holy moly, that is crazy. We talked about it. We expected maybe if they lose to the Broncos, you could see them move on from Sean McDermott. You've got to capitalize your Josh Allen prime window. And that's a whole nother discussion, whether you thought Josh Allen was to blame for that. Wow, Sean McDermott out in Buffalo. Nick, like, when I look at
that's even more competition for the Browns, too.
Yeah.
Like, even if you don't want to meet with McDermott, which I don't know that the Browns will, because it feels like they are really following the shiny object of these younger coaches, you are now getting even more competition because Buffalo is a vacant. It's 10. That's over 25% of the league, well over 25% of the league with head coach vacancies. And that's some pretty good competition when you look at Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, like some serious vacancies here in the AFC.
By the way, Todd Monken, head coach at Southern Miss from 2013 to 15. So there you have it. All right, let's move on, Nick. Final headline here. How Andrew Berry's remarks led Grant Udinski to be frontrunner for the Cleveland Browns. To me, at least, it seems like the top two candidates, like if I was to put money on here, it'd be Jim Schwartz or Grant Udinski to be the two that I think they're really deciding between. They're like complete polar opposites, Nick. It's like Jim Schwartz is the steady CEO, comfortable hire. Meanwhile, Grant Udinski's the unproven, try to find your next Sean McVay. And right now I'm leaning towards that route of that's what I want them to do. Because, Nick, like you talk about all the time about the Browns capitalizing on this defense. I don't necessarily think this lateral move to Jim Schwartz is going to be what changes the needle. And when we talk about how open the AFC North could be this year with Stefanski and Harbaugh gone, like, is this not the time to go try and find an offensive mind? Because, and granted, I don't think he's going to come and be the OC. You could say, well, at least he can come to Cleveland and be the OC and call plays. But then again, I think he could stay comfortably in Jacksonville under Liam Cohen, not kind of risk having a bad tenure here at Cleveland to get a head coach job the following year.
And doesn't Dennis Allen look all right now? You know, you could find defensive coordinators out there, especially when you have quite literally the greatest defensive player of this generation in Myles Garrett. And didn't he just kind of prove that to everybody and anybody who would be interested in coaching this defense? Like, Myles just made football history. So I'm subscribing to that same belief. And like, I get Udinski would be a massive risk. This is somebody that's 30 years old. He doesn't have experience. He doesn't have play calling experience. Like he's been in the league for 6 years, which is a decent amount of time when you factor in that he just turned 30 last week. I just think when you're an organization like the Cleveland Browns and you've been wandering this quarterback desert for 1999 and you have an opportunity to hire somebody that could be a quarterback whisperer, and you don't know if he is or if he's not, but to his credit, he gets credit for the Sam Darnold resurgence in Minnesota, and boy, doesn't Sam Darnold look pretty good right now with the Seattle Seahawks, and he's playing hurt also. And then you look at what's going on in Jacksonville this entire season. Like, Trevor Lawrence had a career year in his 5th year in the league. So I think when you've got an opportunity to finally solve this 20-plus year quarterback crisis that you find yourself in, you have to seize it. And that's why he's my front runner for this job. I go back to what Andrew Berry said in the headline that we have pulled up. And he noted that, like, there weren't a ton of teams that were interested in Kevin Stefanski when the Browns hired him in 2020. It was just the Carolina Panthers that interviewed him. And that was 1 year. The Browns interviewed Stefanski in 2019 and 2020. One of those years, the Browns were the only team to meet with Kevin. He won 2 Coach of the Years. He's one of the highest paid coaches in football after he just landed this new deal with the Atlanta Falcons. So I think deep down, Berry wants to find his own Kevin Stefanski, his own Sean McVay, and I do believe that that's Grant Udinski.
Nick, like when I think of these really anything in the NFL, like I compare like, okay, what's the upside to the downside? What's if this goes tremendously right? What happens if this goes tremendously wrong? What happens? Like if you hire Jim Schwartz, the internal promotion, I just don't really see what the upside is. The defense continues to be magical, but then again, in the same breath, you don't have this new offensive mind in the building that you have your laurels to rest on. Hey, maybe we can turn this around. Like the downside, you hire Udinski as head coach and he stinks. Let's just call it for what is he stinks. One, I'm not sure you can really gather much information from that because of the quarterback position and how Barrett is here in Cleveland, whether you really believe in Shedeur Sanders or not. He's still unproven. But like the upside is you work with Grant Udinski for a year. You see the offense improve. Now, could Jim Schwartz leave because he doesn't want to take orders from a 30-year-old? And I'm not saying he'd be really taking orders. He would just not be the head coach. That's one thing. But if Grant Udinski comes in here, he looks good. You have a foundation to build upon. And if it goes terribly wrong, what's the difference? You can win another 3-4 games and you're looking for possibly a new head coach, or you ride it out with Grant Udinski again. Like, in the NFL, I just want to take swings. And this isn't some level Deshaun Watson risk where you're trading 3 first-rounders. You're not losing any draft capital. You're just, You stink again, and you're looking to maybe either hire a new head coach, or we have this conversation, hey, did we see enough with Grant Udinski where we can build upon it in year 2, possibly with a quarterback in 2027 that we take in the draft?
And dude, look at the league right now. Like with all these head coach openings and all of these firings, like some of these teams, and you don't want it to be the Browns, of course not. Some of these teams are going to be back in the well next year. I could guarantee you that, because with this amount of, some of these hires are bound to fail. So like with Udinski, you have a guy that could possibly be your long-term fit that could help you revive this offense. And I think they're interested. Like, I think it bears noting that first interview, Ryan, it lasted 3 hours. That's a pretty long chit chat. That's a little bit more than the casual, tell me a little bit about yourself. What would you say is your biggest strength and your biggest weakness in the workplace? Like, a 3-hour chat is pretty serious. And the very next day, they invite him to Cleveland for an interview. Like, I definitely think that they're interested. But now that this Sean McDermott thing is out there, I kind of wonder if they slow play this even further, because the Browns were interested in McDermott years ago. So I wonder if they revisit this now. It's obviously, a little bit of an Andrew Berry connection, because he was part of that, group that was maybe interested in McDermott a couple years ago. I think that was a Paul DePodesta fan favorite, was Sean McDermott as well. So it'll be fascinating to see if now they even slow play this further, because they're the only team interested in Udinski. And now you could have potentially another big fish in the pond if they want to revisit Sean McDermott like they did the last time they were looking for a head coach.
Nick, last question before we head out of here on today's The Daily Dog Show. Do you think like GMs like Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam, obviously Cleveland's fan base is tremendous. We all know that the Browns were very vocal, of course. Like, do you think there's pressure from ownership because of the fan base to get this right, rather go the safe route with Jim Schwartz? Because the sentiment I'm getting is, yes, you have your people that are like, just hire Jim Schwartz. It's the easy, steady route to go. But when has that really ever been right for the Cleveland Browns? Like, I understand we're kind of like scarred from doing something out of the ordinary, zigging while everybody's zagging with the Deshaun Watson thing. But again, this isn't that type of level risk for me in hiring Grant Udinski.
Yeah, I think there's a level to it. Like, could we say the quiet part out loud? Jim Schwartz is tremendously popular with the 50-plus-year-old white males. my dad is the poster image of Browns fans that want to just hire Jim Schwartz because it is safe. And I think a lot of older Browns fans, which I can sympathize with, because they've sat through a lot of losing and they remember the glory days and they want to get back to the glory days of what it was like when they were competing for AFC championship games, and they've seen the Browns do the risky moves with the 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson and the quote-unquote bright coordinator, and spend 6 years trying to make it work with Kevin Stefanski. And I think a lot of people do want to just go the safe route, but I think you look at some of the teams that are remaining, like Mike McDonald. Not a lot of people knew that name. That was the Seattle Seahawks taking a gamble on a bright young coordinator, obviously on the defensive side of the football, but that's paying dividends for them. And then they do have 2 old guards in this, Final Four when you look at Sean Payton and Mike Vrabel. So it'll be very interesting to see how this does shake out. And I definitely do think there's added inherent pressure just because, Browns fans care. Like dissimilar to some other markets where you could be doing a coaching cycle and there was not a daily show built around it. Seriously, there's not as much pressure. But here in Cleveland, they've got a ton of pressure to get this one right.
All right, Nick, before we get out of here, call your shot. Browns have a head coach by Friday's taping. We all know they have to satisfy the Rooney Rule, so it's not like we're going to have some announcement today, more than likely. But do they have a head coach by the end of Friday's show?
I don't think so, because how will they? They've still got to satisfy the Rooney Rule thing. So I think unless they drop Antonio Pierce out of like a hot air balloon and get him to check a box. And the Rooney Rule is flawed. I would love for them to revisit this, because the Browns, to their credit, they went out there and they hired the youngest minority general manager who's leading this search. So now my minority general manager has to interview 2 minority coaches. It doesn't do what they intended it to do. And I'm all for equality. Like, I do want to see more minority coaches get into these leadership positions, but I just don't know that this rule is accomplishing what they set out for it to do. And unfortunately for the Browns, until they check that box, they're not going to be able to hire anybody. So I guess as of the information that we have right now, I'll say no, they won't hire a coach by Friday. And we'll go through every single candidate with their interview list all throughout the week here on the Daily Dogs.
Well, we will certainly find out and cover it here on the Daily Dogs. For Nick Padone, I'm Ryan Tyler, and we'll see you tomorrow.